we really thought we defeated cap and trade. You know, if you go back to just most of us in this room take a great sigh of relief in understanding that we defeated the cap and trade energy attack threat on America. And it took an enormous effort because the entire world seemed to be on board with the cap and trade threat, with the global warming threat, with climate change. All the media, all public sentiment, they all said, you know, this is real, climate change is real, we have to address it. And it took an enormous effort to turn the course of public opinion through education and knowledge. And it was really, it was over as far as anybody was concerned. Well, you might remember what this gentleman had to say.
The science is agreed upon.
The debate is over and the science is in.
That's right. Republicans and Democrats alike joined hands and they said climate change is real. We have no choice but to take draconian measures to stop the emission of carbon dioxide that's going to make the glaciers melt and flood our lands and everything. It was everybody. Believe me when I say it was everybody. Watch this guy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Pelosi, lifelong Democrat and Speaker of the House.
And I'm Newt Gingrich, lifelong Republican, and I used to be Speaker.
We don't always see eye to eye, do we, Newt?
No, but we do agree our country must take action to address climate change.
Yeah. This guy's toast.
Get him out of here.
This guy is
Get him
toast.
out of here.
And he's running around Iowa talking about ethanol, but anyway. So what you saw in this joining of hands is Republicans and the Democrats and mass media is it laid the groundwork for the United Nations International Panel on Climate Change to convince the whole world that we need to take drastic steps to cap America's economic growth, to end climate change, and it laid the groundwork for the president to use this remarkable statement.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket.
Electricity rates must, what arrogance. Did you hear that tone of voice? Well, they just must necessarily skyrocket. He's skiing, she's skiing right now in Vail, eating ribs, and he's playing golf, and you know what? But electricity rates must necessarily skyrocket. The science was in, the debate was over, everybody was on board. But then something else happened. All of a sudden, these outstanding think tanks, like Cato and the Heritage Foundation, the American Energy Institute, universities, scholars around the country rose up and started to educate the public and say, wait a minute, what about the high cost of this cap and trade process of capping energy growth in this high cost? What's it going to mean to our economy? What's it going to mean to our prosperity? What's it going to mean to America's economy? What's it going to mean to China and India? Because it really is the Asian Full Employment Act, is what it is. And we began to educate the press and educate the public and educate people like you on the ground about the real facts of the climate change hoax and the real cost of cap and trade and what it really meant to redistributing America's wealth around the world. And then in about 2000, Americans for Prosperity launched a series of rallies around the country using a hot air balloon as a symbol that this was a whole bunch of hot air. 2007, cap and trade was flying high. Climate change was flying high. Al Gore was getting a Nobel Peace Prize and an Academy Award. And for us to be out there in places like South Dakota and Kansas and Texas and New Jersey telling people this was a fraud, people thought we were nuts. The media, my good friend Rachel Maddow and others, we were under withering assault. How dare we say that there's no climate change? They're teaching children in kindergarten today. They are teaching children in kindergarten and first grade about the dangers of climate change. But you know, there's a gentleman named Friedrich Hayek. Friedrich Hayek is the father of Austrian economics, and I'm an economist and an Austrian economist. Friedrich Hayek's book, The Road to Serfdom, 1948 Nobel Peace Prize winner, I would highly recommend. Probably one of the most insightful books of the century. What Hayek teaches us is that the liberal agenda is based on emotion-based politics. Not logic, not sound science. They simply sell it on sound bites and emotion-based pride. Very easy to get across very quickly. The conservative message of free market principles and individual liberty is much harder to explain. It takes more time, it's more difficult, but once you do, you win, every time. And that's what we did. We explained a thoroughly proper message, scientifically backed up about the challenges and the full problems with global warming. So we won, right? We beat cap and trade. The battle's over. Oh, maybe it's not. This gentleman, George Soros, after we defeated cap and trade on the national level, made it very clear. He said that they will adopt in a state-by-state strategy what they could not adopt on the national level, what they could not adopt through federal law. George Soros and his allies will now be using and are using a state-by-state strategy. So you can take things like card check, and you can get it together state by state by having states pass legislation. New Jersey has a card check bill. New Jersey has a card check bill. They can have a union vote without a secret ballot in this state. People don't know that. New Jersey and 10 other northeastern states have a cap and trade program identical to Barack Obama's. Identical. Most people don't know that. The new strategy of the left is to go state by state by state. And in so doing so, make these policies reality right under our very noses. The cap and trade energy bill that was passed in New Jersey is the product of Al Gore. You know, as Al Gore, and it was passed just when Al Gore was winning his Nobel Peace Prize and his Academy Award. And well, I said before, well, cap and trade was riding high. And it was architected by no other than Lisa Jackson. The New Jersey Cap and Trade Bill, known as the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and the Global Warming Solutions Fund, was actually the product of Lisa Jackson, who is now the head of the EPA under Barack Obama. It was pretty prescient back in 2009 in Copenhagen at the Global Warming Climate Change Conference, when the ambassador from Denmark introduced Lisa Jackson to a room full of 1,000 screaming liberal European diplomats, or whining European diplomats. Lisa Jackson, who would now be the head of the EPA, he said Lisa Jackson had served under John Corzine as the head of the DEP in New Jersey, but now she would work under Barack Obama, and that she would do for America what she did for New Jersey. Those are his words. That Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative bill, which you can see here, is identical to that proposed by Obama, who was produced, and it was the template formed by Lisa Jackson. And they were pretty positive where they were going with this. They were pretty arrogant about it. There's a line in that bill, that New Jersey Cap and Trade bill, that says that this bill is designed to segue. I have it focused here in two people. I'll give you a short version. It's designed to segue into a federal bill when adopted. When adopted. Now, let me explain how this works. What cap and trade is. Some people really don't know. I too often assume everybody knows because I live this. My boring life. But the way cap and trade works is every energy producer in the state that uses coal, oil, or fuel has to buy a carbon permit for every 1 ton of carbon emissions that they produce from the minute they open their door. Now, a ton of carbon emissions, how do they figure that? It's based on fuel consumption. They have a chart, and the chart says that 1 gallon of number 6 diesel fuel produces 2.5 tons of carbon emissions. 1 pound of certain coal, there's different types of coal, produces a ton of carbon emissions. A certain cubic feet of natural gas produces. So they base it based on the fuel consumption. And that tells them how much the carbon emissions are, and then the energy producer must buy a permit for every single ton that they produce. Over the course of the year, it's going to be, for a big producer, millions of tons of carbon emissions. By the way, carbon's that stuff you breathe out every 10 seconds or so, so you all should be buying permits shortly, I would imagine. So they buy the permit. Now, where do the permits come from? There are 10 northeastern states, Maine, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Vermont, that are in the system. And they all belong to this commodities exchange called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And every state's DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, issues its allotted shares of permits, which are then sold at an auction held by RGGI. There have been 10 auctions held since this bill was passed in January 2008. 10 auctions have been sold. These auctions are held on the internet. You cannot go to the auction, you cannot see the auction, they are top secret. The only people who can participate in the auction are those who are certified traders, who have registered, paid the fee, and become part of the system. Now, besides the power companies that can go in and buy the permits they need, there are those who go and bid at the auction to buy these permits. Now, guess who they are? Anyone throw out a name? Anybody?
Al Gore. Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs.
George Soros.
Morgan Stanley. Bank of America. A few unknown or Arabic countries, and of course some power companies, and probably some politically connected individuals. We're not sure because we really can't find out who everybody is. It's a secret. And how they buy these permits is a secret. So you ask, okay, why would Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley want to buy these permits? They're not producing energy because there is a limited number of permits. And the power company is going to have to buy them. So you buy the permit today with the hope of selling it down the road at the same auctions through the exchange to the power companies as they need them. Today, those permits can be bought for around $2 a piece, $2. So that means 1,000 tons is $2,000. It is projected by virtually every group studying this that those permits in a short period will be worth anywhere from $20 to $100 a piece. That means if you bought $2,000 worth of permits, they're worth $20 a piece. That's $20,000, right? Or $40,000, I'm sorry. $40,000, not a bad profit. If you bought $1 million worth of permits at $2 million and they go up to 20 or 30 or 100, the profits are staggering, absolutely staggering. I truly believe that this could be the biggest Wall Street ripoff since the subprime mortgage scandal. That the profiteering here is astronomical, astronomical. $777 million of permits have been sold so far. Those permits sold at 1,000 to 10,000% profits, and if yield profits on that just make Bernie Madoff look like a peon. And who pays for this? The states get the money from the original sale of the permitted auction. New Jersey made $65 million on that. New York, $100 million. The cost of the permits. Now this goes back to what Barack Obama said. The cost of the permits that the utility companies are required to buy are passed directly to the ratepayer in a pass-through in your electricity bill. Every penny. Those massive profits that Goldman Sachs or whoever it is can buy get passed directly to you, the ratepayer, in the form of high electricity bills. Projected that your electricity bill will double in the next 9 years, at least double in the next 9 years. This is the only time in American history that I can find a scam where the taxpayers subsidize the manipulation of a marketplace for direct profiteering of other individuals at direct cost to taxpayers. I think it's the most immoral, devious program because, hey, it's right now, it's $2. You barely see it. It's in your bill right now, but you barely see it, right? It's just going to creep up a little bit at a time. Profit taking is amazing. Now, who was also duped here were the environmentalists, because the environmentalists were told that all the money the states would make from issuing these permits initially would go into green projects. Well, that didn't happen. In New York, David Patterson just took the $100 million and used it to balance his budget. In New Jersey last year, Governor Chris Christie, the $65 million went to balancing the budget. No money's going to so-called green projects. Oh, and by the way, we were told that this program would drive down electricity costs and drive down carbon emissions. I'm sorry, I should say. Turns out that the people at Reggie made a big mistake in their calculations. They revealed about 3 weeks ago that they made a huge error in their calculations. They predict they'll have no impact on carbon emissions until at best the year 2031. By which time electricity rates will have quadrupled. We have driven all our jobs and businesses overseas. Folks, electricity is a fundamental cost to any business, any manufacturing business, the casinos in Atlantic City. Businesses were looking at a state factor in the cost of electricity. And when a business makes a decision that energy costs in New Jersey, along with the highest property taxes, worst income tax, fifth highest corporate tax, are gonna go somewhere else, once they take that plant and build it in India, they ain't coming back here for a very, very long time, if ever. So you see now we have cap and trade in 10 states. Now they're talking about pulling California in. California's adopted the same thing. The Midwestern states, they've now entered into cap and trade programs. And by the way, there was a Midwestern cap and trade program through the Chicago's Carbon Trading Commodities Exchange